Hey guys, hey Harry, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you,
We-
Nilanjan?
Good,
Been a while.
good. We missed you on the last pod. I know you're going super good. What's going on in your side of the world? Anything
It's
exciting?
getting quite interesting. I think a lot of people adopting AI. That's
Mm-hmm.
what's been keeping me busy. Like being a trainer and coach, it
Mm-hmm.
usually means like doing a lot of work to get people what they need. And here the beauty is like the training material is hardly ever constant. So almost like the moment I build one, it's already outdated. So every
Yeah.
team I interact with, it's also like a very good learning experience for me personally. So it's interesting,
So
but yeah,
let's talk about this. I mean, we should give a shout out of you. I mean, obviously, you were really good at what you do. I mean, I think we should uh, take a 30 seconds, and if why would company reach out to you, or when they should reach out to you?
okay, yeah, thanks for giving me that time. So I think companies why they reach out to me is usually because they've been trying this and they just want a second pair of eyes looking at it and
Mm-hmm.
giving them a critical opinion about what they should or should not be doing. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one, right? The second thing is, sure, you've been using it and mostly in pockets, right, without really changing the overall pattern of working or the
Mm-hmm.
organizational structure. I think
Mm-hmm.
the biggest reason to reach out to me would be to restructure themselves around agent centric rather than being human
Mm-hmm.
centric. That'd be
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
biggest.
Well said. Well said. I mean,
Yeah.
that actually positions us very well for our first story in here. And I always like to share with positive story. Now, this
Yeah.
was an interesting. So everybody talks about, hey, AI gonna kill the jobs, but what this study shows, done by Ramp guys, which I really appreciate doing this, they're actually saying that they are hiring more. So let's unpack this a little bit. So what's happening here is. So they've done studies for with another company called Revelio Labs, and they studied around 21,000 plus US companies. So this is a very US specific job, so might not translate to other countries in here. But they're essentially looking at this company, saying that the companies that are adopting AI, like you said, and spending money with workforce and whatnot, what results they're getting. So numbers are quite interesting because that's always have been my struggle too. I mean, AI is supposed to give you new opportunities, new way of thinking problem, or solve different problems. So companies should be hiring more people for that kind of new opportunities. So this translates very well. So high intensify adapters, the companies who are really moving into coding agents and, like you're saying, and building agent-centric workforce, their total headcount actually increased by 10.2% within 2 years. So actually, they're hiring more people. Uh, our entry level employment, which is sort of interesting because you and I talked about this, right? The AI is sort of affecting entry level jobs more. But turns out entry level employments actually rose by 12%, which is great. Engineering grew by 7%, sales by 10%, administration, customer service by 6%, which is sort of interesting because there's so many startups are saying use AI agent for customer service. Apparently, they're hiring more people there. Um, an interesting fact about this, which I thought was super interesting in a way, they sort of bucketed them in two groups. The companies that are spending more per employee, I guess more on AI, not only just token, adapting new AI softwares, workflow agents, whatnot, um, are the ones that are actually hiring more people. So heavy adapters are spending around $33. The companies that are just average to $2 per employee are the low adapters, essentially. That's how they're bucketed them.
That
So,
looks interesting to me. That's a
yeah,
crazy correlation. I just wanted to mention even $30 being coined as a heavy utilization looks interesting to me because I thought like thousand even $100 is like nominal
yeah,
per person per month.
yeah.
But $30 seems an interesting number. Anyway, please continue.
No. Yeah. So there are details paper in here. Obviously, I love you guys to go check this out. Um, what I've noticed is that this is not just chatbots, right? We are not talk. We are okay. This Heavy adopters are not talking about companies who just got a Copilot license, free Copilot license, and they're saying AI. These are
Yeah,
the
yeah.
companies who are actually moving the needle. So the gains are actually coming when companies are investing in coding agents, APS, multiple AI products, workflow changes, which is I think is very critical. Like you have to redesign, right? And employee learning. Those are the companies sort of seeing growth or hiring more people. So yeah, I mean that's sort of it's a good story and a positive story to see after all
That's
this layoffs and stuff.
It's good. It's heartening to know, and I think this kind of people are really seeing like how this is done, right? But if I may add, like I think there are two
Yeah.
parts to this, right? This is
Yes.
my
Yeah.
observation. Again, my little learning. I could be completely wrong, or
Yeah.
this is just my bubble. The one
Hmm.
part I see is before the hiring begins, there is a little bit of reorganization, or how do I say, relearning for the organization that
Hmm.
happens before the
Hmm.
hiring, because the new
Hmm.
talent that you're picking up is not necessarily going through the same interview process, is not
Hmm.
going through the same approach of saying, hey, don't use AI when you come to the interview. That seems like completely ridiculous in the current situation. That's number one.
Hmm.
Number
Hmm.
two is uh, hiring and then agent. How do you say, onboarding? Agent means also that look, I was on a podcast recently where I also mentioned this, right? Which is bringing a coding agent into your team is also like onboarding a fresh grad or onboarding a mid-level engineer into the team. And every time you
Correct.
hire someone and bring them on board to the team, there is a cost involved with
Hmm.
that, which is basically you have to invest in helping them on board, get that context. And with
Right.
people, with agents coming and going constantly, you have that accelerated churn life cycle. So which means you have a lot more work to put that context together, which is where you need more people
Hmm.
to maintain that system of being able to onboard agents. So yeah, I don't know, like I think just to come back to that point, why you will need more people, I think people will first need to reorient themselves with agent
Hmm.
onboarding. The second thing
Hmm.
is the agent onboarding is not free, it comes with a
You're right.
cost. That
Right.
probably means both money, time, and also hiring more people to onboard the
Yeah.
agents to do this job. I mean, yeah, that's what I
So
would
I,
add.
I saw another IKEA. I should have done that. I need to look it up. It's not handy right now. There was somebody shared on LinkedIn about what IKEA is doing. IKEA's sort of efficiency growth has went up with the AI usage, but they laid off zero people. Okay, so what they're doing internally, like you're saying, not only just reshuffling, right? But there is whole reshuffling soon. We're going to be working differently going forward, right? Like agents treating agents as your like a co-worker. So they've been reshuffling and retraining people so that they can use leverage this AI efficiency and improve their output. So that's also a very very different approach, and probably the right approach instead of saying, "Hey, who should I lay off now? Get rid of all the engineers," right? I mean, so it's really really good to see this.
Again, thanks to whoever put the report together. I think this is
Yeah,
good
yeah,
data.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So the next one I have is which is super cool. Going back to now, how many times have you put your credit card number and bank account number in ChatGPT, Harry?
Never.
Okay. Uh,
At least I'm
so
quite
I
paranoid.
okay, okay, okay. I am not. I am. I'm not good at this. Sometimes I upload crap just to get value and quickly analyze. But they build. Obviously, we are not the only one. There are lots of people, and that's one of the biggest concern with lots of companies have this. That's saying that what all data that we are typing into ChatGPT and that prompt data is going in, and that's just sort of black box, right? We don't know what the model providers doing with the data. That's completely black box. So these guys here from National Design Studio build this tiny model. I love this kind of stuff called Rampart, which is a 14.7 MB, not GB, not terabyte, a privacy wall for AI prompt. What this does is that imagine this model sort of sits between your chatbot that you're running on your browser, which could be ChatGPT, and the actual model provider. So anytime you type in this prompt, this model essentially um, um, sort of extracts or hides all the private terms, like your name, your address, it could be your bank account, hides that before sending it to the actual model. So it's sort of a privacy filter. It has two layers in it. One is it shows a demo in here. So one good thing is that it actually can run on your browser. So your name that goes like this. So instead of your actual name, it says my name is given name, surname, my social security number. All that sort of gets extracted or hidden from the prompt before it goes to the model.
That's quite interesting.
It,
I mean, that might actually
yeah.
help people like me who are like paranoid, and because of that, I don't end up using some of the capabilities, right? Like for I or rather I redact stuff before I put documents into Cowork or stuff like that. So I have to do that additional work ahead of time. But I guess if something like this, I haven't really checked it out. I've heard of Rampart too, but I haven't really tried it out. But this looks really
So
interesting.
yeah, so there is an npm library, obviously Hugging Face model, simple enough. It can run in your browser as well. So it uses web GPU, which I thought was
Hmm.
pretty cool. So yeah, but just a filter wall for all the prompts, all the usage that we have. Be Claude, ChatGPT, really doesn't matter. It will hide all your um, so privacy is sort of a privacy filter for that. Um, okay, so next story that we're gonna go in, which is getting lots of buzz in here, which is let me share this. GLM 5.2. Have you used this, Harry, yet?
I am currently trialing it, so I think the jury is still out.
Okay.
But it looks quite useful, I think, in the sense that I can echo the fact that is it better than Claude and all that? Like, I don't want to go into that area. Like I always said, I've not been
Mm,
a fan of benchmarks. Is it
yeah.
usable? Certainly, yes. Is it cheaper than Opus? Again, yes. So yeah, it's almost looks like an alternative which I could live with for a much lower cost. So I really feel this has some potential if I can
How are
continue
you
using it
using
for a
it?
week.
So you've been using it through Open Router, or what's your
Open
mechanism?
code.
Open
So
Code.
I use I use open code, and open code has subscription models through which I get that. And yeah, so most of my open source model usage is through open code. So and open code is like really also much more cleaner and neater. It's my personal choice again, which is in terms of bringing other models in. So my current way of working is I bring GPT into the open code ecosystem. That becomes my frontier model, and then I have like open source
Mhm.
models from open code go or other subscriptions which I use for my purposes. Open router and other
So
things, some of them I do not prefer because it's quantization for some of
yeah.
these fellows, and that creates an issue. So that's one of the reasons I am currently using open code, but that's to the best of my knowledge. I don't know if there's a better way
So
of
you like
getting
you like
access.
their experience better than Cloud Code?
Oh, that's a good question. I personally am a fan of open code, if you ask me.
Mm,
The reason
mm,
being the visibility and the TUI experience, especially, is very, very friendly for me.
yeah. Mm,
At times, I find myself thinking, could Cloud Code not have some of these things which open code has? But
mm,
that said, yeah, I think both of them have their advantages. It's a matter of taste, I would say. Like, I like open code because of the right side panel, what's happening, and the agent creation
yeah.
and the cleaner approach of being able to bring multiple models, and it just gives me that much
Yeah.
more convenience.
Yeah. 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 No, I think this is all really, really interesting. So one of the thing I wanted to get at, and this is what I thought was super interesting, what uh, the Snowflake guys did with this.
Mm.
So GLM is obviously cheaper. I mean, there is no doubt about it. The cost is like a 10x or 15x cheaper than Opus 4.8. And now the Fable is out, which is probably more expensive. But I liked how Snowflake guys, the Coco team, ran the same comparison with, so they had their own eval essentially with some DB task, which is like generate queries, run them, and it's the breakdown was pretty interesting because this is the type of comparison. I'm like you, I don't like leaderboard. Give me some real examples so that I can compare. So a couple of things was very interesting. So obviously performance was very at par with Opus. I think they were down by a few points here and there, but like you said, on a large scale of thing, does it matter? Probably not. But one of the things but I think these two models are designed very differently. So that's why their outputs or their processing thing is very different. GLM on average spends more token than Opus for the same task. But again, it's so cheap, it really doesn't matter whether they spend too much token. GLM has its whole nature of, which I thought was interesting, if you ask me. It was I think it's baked in by having a dual platform validation, which I truly don't understand how that's implemented, but it's by its nature, based on this analysis, it validates its output more than Opus does. So that's probably one of the reasons why it spends so much token. But that also tells you that GLM is a cheaper, but Opus is better. But this argument is so different, because that also brings another interesting point, that if you're building your product using one of this model, since GLM behaves so differently than Opus, you almost have to design different validation mechanism for each model. So you just cannot switch between two models and expect your application to run same. That's exactly what I'm trying to say here.
That's a very good point, and I think that's been my observation also. Like when you switch between, like, a frontier model to an open source model, you'll see very different results. And especially
Mm,
like the pattern of usage that I have, like which I've mentioned in
mm,
the past also, right? Which is
mm,
I use one model to write the spec and one another model to
mm,
review it, maybe another
mm,
model to go implement it and stuff like that. In this
mm.
case, like if you use one model to do the same thing all over,
Yeah,
it's easier, much easier, because it's hallucinating or thinking right
yeah,
in the same pattern. When you put all of them in the same boat, like, there you will really find those issues. And that's one of the reasons you will need deterministic sort of tools which
yeah,
give you those evals, which can keep these models in check. Otherwise, like, left to themselves, I think it's like this, right? Working with two different individuals, they have a personality and how they behave.
right,
Without getting into technicality, I think the easiest way I have been able to model this is just anthropomorphizing it, so that I don't really have to worry about understanding. So, for example, DeepSeek V4 is extremely fast, and it's got
yeah,
this DSpark capability. If you've read
mm,
about it, again, it's a very interesting article. I'm still
yeah,
parsing it and trying to understand what DSpark is and how it works. And
mm,
GLM 5.2 has this different architecture which you mentioned, which is a token hungry
yeah,
in nature of it, but it actually
right,
does a good job.
yeah,
Net, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of one point, which is, I think I'm drawing a corollary to what you said. Everyone has to have some sort of a benchmark for themselves. Like if
yeah,
you're a company and you have like a certain thing you worry about, I would say
yeah,
keep it simple, keep it on the money per dollar spent. Can you solve a certain problem which is standard for yourself? It's almost
yeah,
like having an interview question for the
yeah,
agent.
totally.
LLM, right?
Uh,
So if you have that standard set, then don't worry about. I mean, use the third party benchmarking to your advantage. But then, if you
yeah,
want a good enough reason, you need an interview for your LLM.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to have standard eval sets. I mean, I'm gradually getting there, because now I do have a bunch of eval sets that safeguards, at least for the some of the core functionalities of agent link. So as I go through models and models, it gives me better confidence in terms of what I'm losing, what I'm gaining. Yeah, that's a table stakes right now. I feel like I know
Yep.
lots of companies are moving to GLM. I personally have a little bit of um, worry when I use Chinese model. I
Yeah.
feel like you don't have the. I little bit worry, because there is obviously maybe a little bit of paranoia with what's happening there, and some of this LLMs is impossible, because even though they're open source, they're really not telling you how they train this model. So I don't know whether there might be a backdoor that calls home and with all the data, whatnot. But obviously the performance of these models are getting really good. Which brings up to what is a much be a bigger point in here, which is let me switch to that. This uh, whole drama going around between this most capable models are now getting safeguarded by government, right? So, so Fable 5, we talked about this in few podcasts ago. There's one of the most capable model. Turns out it's so good that government had to shut it down. But apparently they're back. I mean, I switched to Fable now, I think yesterday or something. But what happened here is that they have released the model, but they have extensively put some safeguards in, which is in and around cybersecurity. So it has this sort of a router now before this model, essentially at a high level. The router sort of detects if there sense any sorts of cybersecurity issues or challenges with your prompts. It either going to deny it or going to fall back to a lower model like Opus 4.8. So that's how they're sort of safeguarding it. But what I've seen in reports in the social media and X recently is that obviously this is, I'm sure this is going to get better, but it's obviously over indexing on safety. So it's more than necessary is falling back to Opus. So before and after performance of this model is drastically lower than it was before. So it's actually affecting your performance. Have you gone back to Fable 5 yet, or you're not?
Not yet. I mean, it's interesting, right? Since you've been talking about Fable so much, and
Yeah,
people have forgotten about Sonnet. It's
yeah,
almost like I suddenly have had. I don't know if again this is anecdotal, right? I
yeah,
went from a Sonnet to Opus, and
yeah,
I willingly came back to Sonnet because I found it a lot more reasonable in terms of getting work done.
yeah,
I actually had better outcome in general, right? And then I went to Fable
right,
just to try it
yeah,
out before it was like locked out.
yeah,
It looked interesting, but uh, again, truth be told, I don't see a very many big reason to say that you keep running behind these bigger models, right? I think the problem I am facing today
yeah, yeah.
is cost. And I
Mm,
simply, sure, I mean, I fully am with people who believe that being on the latest model is the most important thing. But
mm,
honestly, do I miss this model when it was gone? I I don't think so. And am
mm,
I worried about the fact that it has been extremely hamstrung because of the security? Maybe not. It's okay within its again those benchmarks. I don't know whether I want to worry about it. The bigger point that I think you already made, or maybe I'm trying to draw from what you
mm.
said, is there. This is going to happen a lot more as more capable stuff comes out, and there will be safeguards and release related
I mean, I think,
rollout problems.
yeah, I
We have to
don't,
start living with it, right? So, and we cannot say
yeah,
that
I
my
have I
software
have a
delivery is
huge
dependent on the mod.
yeah, yeah, no, 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 you're right, absolutely right. I'm with you. I mean, the Sonnet, I had a better experience with Sonnet than Opus. I mean, my sessions has gone frustrating. Maybe I'm not using the proper things, but my day-to-day interactions are very frustrating. So
Mhm.
I am definitely exploring open source model, but again, I'm worried about Chinese models. I'm really worried about this. So
Yeah,
that's I need to figure out a balance there. But I think you're absolutely right. Do I care about this? No. What I fundamentally care about is that rationing the intelligence, right? I mean, this model is going to get
yes.
better and better. Government coming in and telling who is allowed to use what intelligence feels a little weird to me. And not to mention, going back to this is overall going to affect American models provider. I mean, I saw a recent post from a senator, which I thought was interesting. We gotta, because now no one is stopping GLM or other models to get better, right? They're going to continue to improve. So what are you going to do? Stop using open source model? It really doesn't make sense. Companies are already moving to like Airbnb, Shopify. Most of them already use open source models. So I think the better approach should be how can we build better open source models here in US. And I don't know, safeguarding like this is sort of helpful. I don't know. At this strategy, I think is a stopgap. We need to find a better way to handle this.
I think policy definition is not something that we can think about, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
honestly, yeah, do I know better? Maybe I don't know. Also, like
yeah, yeah.
you have a highly potent piece of technology, and I think it's better to be safe than sorry is how any government would want to think about it. So I guess all measures are like, it makes sense at that point in time. Retrospectively, we'll have to think about it. But yes, I think respecting government policies, we live with what we have. And
Yeah.
the reason I brought up Sonnet is Sonnet 5 dropped 5 days ago. And
Right. Right.
I'm currently more interested in Sonnet 5 and JLM than, like, I mean, I didn't really do this intentionally. I knew Fable
Yeah.
was back, but I honestly haven't had the time to go back to Fable. I'm still experimenting with Sonnet 5 and GLM 5.2.
Yeah. 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 Is Sonnet 5 available to everybody? I don't know.
No,
I don't
not
see
yet.
it in my model
Not yet.
list
Not
yet.
yet.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of government and powerful model, there is obviously another one coming up.
Oh, yes.
OpenAI released a new set of models, GPT 5.6. Again, they are behind the government gate, so it's obviously not available to everybody. Only handful of companies. Um, I see this approach. I mean, I know a few folks who work in the company who got access to Mythos and others, and they're testing out and finding bugs and solving them. I guess it makes sense. But yeah, we gotta figure out a better way. So they created a new model called Soul Maximum Capability Terra. I mean, it's impossible to keep up with all this. Um, but yeah, so OpenAI is not behind there. They also have a sort of at par model, um, which is again behind the gate. So we have to take it for what it's worth here. We cannot actually verify whether these benchmarks are valid or not.
Makes sense.
Um, the prices seems reasonable to me. It seem like Claude, so nothing exciting out there. So I do see Anthropic launched Sonnet 5. I don't have any direct links for that, but it's so totally built for agenting, right? Sonnet, the previous Sonnet model was excellent. That's when I think Claude made its statement, Anthropic, right? The previous Sonnet was so good, the most of the users sort of moved to Claude Code for that.
I've been with Sonnet throughout the journey, like, and with all
Mm.
the 4.x versions.
Yeah.
Uh, the model from Anthropic, or for that matter, any LLM provider for that matter, I am always a Sonnet fan. And among all of them, it's a very well balanced one. If you're
Yes.
depending on it to write code, extremely
Yeah.
well balanced and very, very good personality, also, so to speak, in terms of being
Yeah.
rational about getting work done.
Yeah. 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 And I think I think this is where Opus actually, I think, I think so. Beauty of Sonnet was that it was very concise in its response to. I mean, I wonder why Opus is so verbose. It speaks out so much junk that I hardly, it's painful to read. I wonder whether it's more to monetize the output tokens versus reality. You never know what kind of knobs they're
We don't know,
turning
right?
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But you're absolutely right. My experience with Sonnet was much better because
Speaking
it
of which,
was,
I have a question, like, just out of
yeah,
curiosity.
yeah,
What
yeah.
is the effort level that you keep it on? Like, if you're on Opus or Fable,
Always
what
max,
always
always
max,
high.
is it? Okay.
Yeah, always high.
Okay.
I don't do what you do. I mean, I like to do what you do. I don't switch between models. I don't do that exploration. Like you have one specific model for planning, one for others. It makes total sense to me. I just don't do that.
Got it. The reason why I was curious is because what you mentioned is very typical behavior. When the effort level is high, it starts to do a lot of counseling in between various, like, it tries to spin up several sub agents and agent teams, and tries
Mm,
to revise and review and come back to you with a very, very well thought out answer. And that usually makes it time consuming and verbose. What
yeah,
I've noticed is, if I keep the effort level to medium to high, they're reasonably okay. And sometimes I even take it to the point of keeping it low, uh, and you get very quick responses. But
yeah,
I don't know what's happening. Again, you're right. Like, none of us know what's internally the harness setup like to, like, process a effort level. So yeah,
yeah,
maybe
yeah, yeah,
default is better. Just default max, stay there.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I've started doing this that I run the model and connect it to my phone. So I review the plan when I'm in front of my computer, then have it run while I switch doing some other work. Um, so yeah, I
Dispatch.
mean, I'm
That's
yeah,
great.
I don't care about the time that much. I care about the get it right. Um,
Agreed. Agreed.
so switching from that last story, then we'll move to the main story of loop engineering. That'll be more fun to talk about. This is the last one, which is this is a very common pattern, right? I mean, so model providers not only sort of taking care of the intelligence, they want to sort of capture the compute layer as well. So OpenAI, Anthropic has announced their chip. OpenAI is working with Broadband on to unveil a new inference chip, measuring this going to be completely used by their own ChatGPT model, which kind of makes sense to me, to be honest with you. They now
Standard
have
vertical
enough data.
integration.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
now have enough data to understand exactly what they need from their hardware to extract maximum throughput and performance. It sort of makes sense. It's bad for NVIDIA, um, which is yeah, it's bad for NVIDIA. Being a stockholder of NVIDIA, I'm worried about them a little bit. But yeah,
Maybe
OpenAI
not also,
is.
right? Maybe NVIDIA still finds its home with the open source models because open source models are not going to be vertically integrating into hardware ecosystems.
Mm,
So they're not going to build
mm,
their own unless it comes to open source hardware also, which is not something that you want to rule out. But given there is a healthy how do you say share of the market which is by open
mm,
source models, Nvidia
mm,
still has a home there is what I'm
mm.
thinking, but that's just
So
me.
this brings back one interesting things that I'm kind of formulating right now, right? So the trend here, I'm trying to pretend an expert, which I'm not. So obviously, you see vertical integrations, like you said, it totally makes sense from OpenAI strategy, right? Why depend on other when you can control the end-to-end value chain, right? Now, I saw a recent interview from that CEO from Palantir, and we've seen lots of trend from Microsoft also, right? They just announced a frontier.co or something. They're just creating a FDE department, right? Putting lots of money in there. So it's going to help companies sort of deploy AI agents. Like for what are you doing, but at large scale, right? Um, so that brings a lots of. He pointed out something that the Palantir CEO pointed out something that made me think through this a little bit. So we just talked about, right? So we are prompting this provider, so ChatGPT, Claude, what have you, all this model with all this prompt and data questions. I'm building product, I'm bouncing ideas. All this data is going into them, right? So now they own the compute. They obviously own the model layer. Now they also have access to your data and sometimes company secrets, right? Your alpha, your secret sauce, which brings a lot of interesting aspect. What he's pointing out, that's a huge risk for enterprises who are adopting these technologies, right? So I just heard Anthropic announce that they're going to be building new drugs. Now, if I'm a pharmaceutical company who's been using Claude internally or advocating we should use Claude coding agents and build all this stuff, it makes me wonder, or according to him, he's saying the companies are really worried that are they we are prompting them using them. What they might do with this data is that they take that data and build a competitor. So
And there's
I'm
nothing
going,
in a clause which says like you're not supposed to take my
yeah,
data. Like ideally speaking, if you are getting a consulting company to come in and do some work for you, you have a non-compete, right? Do we really
mhm,
have a non-compete clause with any of these AI
no,
agencies? No.
no. So I'm sharing this idea. I'm just saying they're going to do it. But what's stopping them from taking the idea of agent link and building them? I know they don't probably, we're too small in here. But you get the point though, right? I mean, if they just gonna have access to all this data. That's why the scared model company can go after any business because they're learning from all this. So open source, or somehow we gotta figure out that I'm gonna be using these models, these layers, have them do compute. Maybe I'm not interested in. I'm happy they're doing compute. I don't care, but I do care about what's happening in the app layer. And how can I make sure that my secrets, my data is not being used to train or build a competitor company? I think that's is unknown. No one is answering that question, and I think that's where open source model becomes so relevant in the discussion. That you have to somehow
That's a
protect
really
your
very
IP. Yeah,
extremely critical point
you're
that you
paying
made.
for, yeah, you're not paying for tokens now. You're paying token. You're paying. You're they're also getting your data. They're getting your alpha. I mean, this is scary. I feel like.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
you have every reason to be worried about it, right? If you think
yeah,
about it, we have already zero moat. Like
yeah,
the moat,
yeah,
first moat was effort, right? If you
yeah,
already have
yeah.
working code,
Right,
then like
right,
building that would have taken 2 years, so nobody can do
right,
that. Now that moat is
right,
gone. The second
right,
moat is IP. If the IP
right.
moat is gone, obviously, like someone can just recreate your company itself. The third
Yeah,
moat is data. Now, if the
yeah,
data is available to them, they can retrain information or extract inferences from there, which might be giving them insights into what needs to be built next. So your
yeah,
data moat is gone. What you're
yeah,
left with is essentially a network of people, and
yeah,
why people are with you, and what is the service that you're providing to them. I
yeah,
mean, think about it as a law firm or as a pharmaceutical, or for that matter, even political advisory. Lot of this is very very dangerous domain in the sense that your secrets are not secrets anymore, and there is no clause there legally speaking, if I'm not wrong, which
yeah,
really I don't think any of us have really negotiated, unless the big ones of course have. At least the smaller people, none of us have negotiated a non-compete or a confidentiality clause
yeah.
with these model companies.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you brought up a very good point that if I go in and consult into a client, we file non-compete, right? You'll be working inside my company. You're probably going to learn how we our trade secrets. You cannot go back and build a separate company. It doesn't make sense. Model companies can. That's a scary bit.
It's a big hole, right? Like, and
Yeah, it's
that's
a
one of the
huge,
reasons
huge.
where, yeah.
Lots of companies are exploring. I mean, I think open source
I
is a
don't know if
way. I mean,
law
that's.
firms are watching any of our shows, but if there's a lawyer amongst one of us who's watching, it'd be good if they can chime in and
I'll
tell us
share the
what.
video offline. I'll share the Palantir video with you. I mean, obviously he is all over the place, but he makes a good argument. I mean, that's what Palantir is solving for them. There is a reason why Department of War uses them because
Mhm.
we don't want the secrets to go to Claude and do other models or other countries, right? So. All right, so that brings up to let's go back to something what we are really passionate about, which is engineering. So there is obviously a new term. We are behind a little bit. Loop engineering has been around for quite some time now. I'm just catching up to this. So there is a new thing going on called loop engineering. Before I jump into read my notes, maybe I'll give you an opportunity. I know you're sort of using it. Can you describe loop engineering to our audience a little bit?
I think if you wanted to put it in a single sentence, a
Yeah.
loop engineering is about creating a system which is self-improving,
Mhm.
which is particularly useful if you are dealing with agents, right? Because agents love autonomy, and you don't want to be sitting in front of the machine staring at
Mhm.
what it's doing. So you have to give
Mhm.
it a task and let
Mhm.
it iterate, improve, and come back to you with the best solution, like what you were looking for. Like when you
Yeah.
mentioned, I put it on high effort because I want like get it done. That kind
Right.
of task, right? And
Right.
especially if you're working with something where you don't really know the particular goal, like this is exactly what I want, but you want a certain iterations of improvements and
Yeah.
come back to me after the improvement. That's
Right.
perfect loop. And this is not something new. We do this already. Like
Mm.
if you're building a product, we have multiple iterations of it. We
Right.
go through experiments and then we come back.
Right. Right.
And in my limited experience of using loops, of course, like I started off with the basic Ralph Wiggum, loop, right? Which is
Mm.
that is part of Claude. There's a plugin which helps you do that. Then
Mm.
there was like Karpathy's auto research, which is also
Mm.
technically a loopy mechanism.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
essentially, improve, 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 and come back to me with an experimental solution, like which is the Karpathy loop. And the third one is like obviously you have a few more approaches, and then the recent article by Adi Osmani about loop engineering, and essentially that kind of summarizes about auto self improvement and what you really want to do in terms of evals and stuff like that. So uh, recapping, in net, it's essentially a approach of software engineering where you iterate, towards a goal, and while you are improving along the way. So that's what loops are.
So, so obviously, uh, don't prompt loop. I hear all this term like, so essentially what I do, typically what I do, at least when I'm sort of planning search, figuring out how to build this, kind of doing back and forth, I prompt, I wait for the result, I prompt. What I see some examples of loop engineering, and I could be completely wrong here, is that saying, hey, don't prompt, right? Instead create loop. What that
Hmm.
essentially is telling me is that figure out what you want to achieve, and figure out how, like you said, how you want to verify this and have it go, right? Sort of describe the problem, describe what's the end state, describe how it can verify, and just let it run instead of you
Correct.
prompting it over and over again. So in the
Correct.
loop scenario, then model is sort of creating the next prompt then, or?
That is indeed the correct observation. So basically, what
Okay.
you're trying to do is there
Mhm.
is a progress aspect to it,
Okay.
right? And
Okay.
you have the model record, and it's learning from the first iteration into the
Mhm.
second one, which means that leads to the next iteration. So
Mhm.
a concrete example I'll give you, right, of
Yeah.
what I've
Yeah.
used
Yeah.
it for.
Yeah. Mhm.
So most often we say test-driven development is something that you want to use with coding
Correct.
agents because that makes
Right.
it better. But a
Mhm.
universal test-driven development skill is usually not suitable for your own code base because your code base has certain intricacies and it has difficulties within that tech stack, because of which
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
agent games it. It doesn't achieve good coverage, or the tests are not tight enough. The
Yeah.
lot of this happens often enough. So what I
Right.
do is usually I try to look at what is my branch coverage after I use the skill. Then after that, I also check for mutation testing to see like what's going on. So if I
Mhm.
take these two parameters and say, hey, I wanted to build a test-driven development skill for my code,
Yeah.
have it write a test, and then
Right.
I will look at the reports. And then if
Mhm.
the reports are poor, I'll say you have to achieve this much percentage by the end of it.
Mm.
I want zero
Mm.
mutation bugs, and I want 100% branch coverage. If you
Mm.
haven't achieved it, figure out
Mm.
what may have went wrong in that iteration, put that into the next prompt,
Mm.
re-inject the prompt, go back
Mm.
again, try it out. So
Mm.
do this for, let's say, 15 iterations. I don't know whether you're going better off or worse off, but try to
Mm.
move in the direction that anything that makes sense, like maybe you want
Mm.
to do a gradient descent around it, so
Yeah.
be it. Basically
Mm.
what you want to do is formulate your problem
Mm.
as around one parameter which you really care about, saying I want
Mm.
to achieve this, and then I wanted to learn and improve towards this.
Mm.
uh, Typically, why I really like this approach is, when I initially started writing skills, I would do this very manually. It was very tedious.
Mm.
I wrote TDD
Mm.
skill, it's not working. Then again, I'd go modify it and again do it manually. So doing this iteration manually was very painful. Instead, putting it into a loop and then come back to me with the final version, I could experiment a lot more. So I'll stop there. Does that make sense so
No,
far?
yeah,
What
no,
I've
it totally makes sense. So you mentioned at the beginning there is also a self improve. Obviously, I'm in a camp of you manage to do it because you understand how manual TDD process works, right? You have to first learn how to manually
correct,
do it, then
correct,
only you can automate, right? Where
correct.
is the self improvement comes up? Is it that failures that get feedback to it so that it knows it
That is
improves
correct.
itself, or okay,
Yeah. So basically, let's say the first iteration, I hit 75% branch coverage,
right?
and three mutants survive. So then
Mhm.
I have one agent go and review the output and come up with a postulate like what went wrong.
Yeah.
So then it would say that, hey, this guy really tried TDD, but he didn't do it the TDD way. He wrote the code first, later wrote the test, so kind of missed a few things. So then
Mhm.
the postulation there would be that ideally he should have written the test first and then gone there. The next
Mhm.
iteration, you hit about 80-85%, and it still doesn't work very well. Then it says, no, it didn't progressively write the test. Bugger
Mhm.
wrote the test all at one go, then code all at one go, then
Mhm.
it did not work. So I'm telling it from real
Yeah.
experience, right? These were the
Yeah, yeah,
iterations. I'm
totally.
sorry, I don't have that
Mhm.
handy to show you.
Yeah, yeah, that's
But
fine.
every time it captured these kind of findings, sometimes it
Yeah,
would go off the rack, right? Unnecessarily, it would
yeah.
say, postulate that, oh no, the tool itself was wrong, the coverage report itself is wrong, and all that. But then,
Mm.
yeah, then you have
I
to,
swear, man.
it'll go a little bit here and there,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you get the idea.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. So
One
yeah,
example,
this, yeah, go ahead.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
please, please. No, no, please go ahead.
I think I just wanted to share like a very quick example, if I may.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Share your screen.
so
We'll stop.
So often enough, I think you know that I use a lot of spec-driven development and all of that
Yes.
approaches, right?
Yes.
So some very difficult work that I have to do is often enough. I need to do loops of certain things. So, for example,
Yeah.
there is this particular use case which I was experimenting with, which is called architectural decision records. I will just open this image up here, and so basically the process here is that when I'm capturing the specification for one feature, I go
Hmm.
through certain artifacts like proposal, design, specs, and
Yeah.
tasks. And
Yeah.
maybe what I do is make an important architectural decision during the first feature. I want that fed back to me during the second feature when I'm building it. And I don't want to make mistakes, which I have already
Hmm.
recovered from.
Hmm.
I know
Hmm.
that I have moved from MongoDB to MySQL. I don't want a
Okay.
future iteration of myself
Yeah.
going back to
Hmm.
MongoDB. I
Hmm.
mean, we should not go to MongoDB anyhow, but yeah. So,
Hmm.
right. But this you realize is a loop, right? I have to build
Yeah.
several features to understand if my workflow itself is wrong or if there's something missing in the workflow in the
Yeah.
harness I put together. To build
Yeah.
like 15 features, it will take me an entire day to do it manually,
Right.
right?
Right.
Just going back and forth, prompting, prompting,
Right.
prompting. So what I did is I put this into a Ralph loop, which is basically through Claude. When you go into Claude and you look at your plugins, you already have your Ralph.
Yeah.
So you can pull that up and then have it write a prompt, which says basically this kind of has my whole like orient, identify the next slice, build the sub-agent task, and essentially verify what happened. So, and then I also have like a backlog of stories from which it can pick up, and then
Yeah.
it will run through those stories in multiple iterations, and then
Yeah.
the sub-agent itself, like each loop, I hand it off to a sub-agent, so it doesn't know it's part of an experiment itself. So it's kind of a blind tester.
Okay.
So this is like what's inside a Ralph, right? Now, if I
Yeah.
have to run this, technically what it means is just this one prompt which you're seeing here, which is basically Ralph, and then I say cat the prompt.md, and then the completion promise is that all my features are built in.
Yeah.
So if, so basically at the end of it, I'll have like, you know, a few 15, 20 features built, after
Yeah.
which I can come back and review what happened. And the agent would have never asked me what happened. And
Right.
I have clearly given this is the prompt reinjection aspect. Like every time it will just reinject the prompt until the promise is achieved. This is Ralph's, but
Yeah.
I think technically any loop you go to, which you were showing also the article,
Yeah.
that is how it would operate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we just describe the prompt or a skill that you want this loop to go through. One example that I have in my notes, which is sort of useful, like you said. I mean, typically what we do is can you fix this authentication bug, for an example, and it will do that. It will ask you questions, and the loop way of thinking about it is that fix every failing authentication test. Do not stop unless the unit test pass. So you're sort of giving guide. Then make sure you link the code. Make sure there is no type error. These are all the validation steps that you are adding in. Now, one of the tricky bit about loop is that obviously you're going to be spending lots of tokens, right? Output tokens. So you can safeguard also in this example, hey, they stop after 8 attempts, maybe 10 attempts, 15,
Correct.
whatever that makes sense, so that you don't go off the rails and saying, hey, you just spent $100,000 on loop. Uh, so that's sort of it. And I saw lots of interesting stuff. This is a great way to automate too, right? I mean, check all the PRs. If there is a failing test in PR, figure out what's failing or review that. That could be another sort of loop automation, correct?
I've kind of used it for that also, but
Mm,
again, it could just my experience, right? Any
mm,
loop, at least this is my thinking. Any
yeah.
loop should have an improvement aspect to it.
Mm,
Like I wanted to do incremental improvements for every loop, so that the final outcome is something that is better than what I could have achieved in one shot. So, which is
mm,
why for a problem that requires a loop, I cannot use a prompt. That's my being abstract here, I
Say
apologize.
say that one more time. Say that one more time.
Right. If I know what I want exactly, right, then I would prompt
Yeah.
it. I don't need a loop for it.
Right.
But I know that I want to achieve a certain ideal state, but I don't know how to achieve it. Right.
Mm,
Which means I have to go through multiple incremental iterations of
yeah.
improvement to
Yeah.
reach that stage. And
Yeah.
even reaching halfway there is still better than nothing. So
Yeah.
that's where I use a
So
loop.
I think this is
Uh,
where Claude confused it. I mean, Claude has, I think what you're describing is more in Claude terminology, that's called goal. You set up a goal saying that this is the end state I want to go after.
I see, I
Um,
see, I see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
and then you just figure out, right? Iterate. I don't care about the message. This is the beginning, this is the end. Figure out the middle for me. Um, I'm with you. That's how I think too. But most of the people also use loop as sort of an automation mechanism. Like, hey, do this every
Yeah,
5 minutes,
basically,
or
problem solving is one, which you could do in many orchestrated way, right? Like you could have
yeah,
like 10
yeah,
different experts, like a mixture of expert situations solving a problem and coming back to you.
yeah,
Doesn't really
yeah,
require a loop. But the beauty
yeah,
of a loop is improvement is that's the keyword for me. Something's got to improve every time you
yeah,
loop so
yeah,
that something comes out of it, right? And that's what I
yeah,
think in the last before last podcast which we did, I spoke
yeah,
about the whole workflow, SDD workflow itself, and how
yeah,
teams improve and all. So
yeah,
that.
yeah. My big concern, my concern, my big thing is that, I mean, everybody tries to use this. One thing you and I talked about before we went live is that verification step, which is the most important thing. Um, I don't necessarily think everybody knows how to do that very well. And so that's something to watch out for. And another big thing that I am struggling lately and I'm very much focused on is that whole comprehension debt thing. The most of this, more you automate, more you distance yourself from the output, more you lose how your product actually works. So that line, so your examples are really, really good. You're refactoring something, a very very narrowed down problem that, hey, go from MongoDB to this. I think for those things it makes sense. But hey, go build an ERP solution for me in a loop. It's a potentially it's possible, but I mean, do you know how that works anymore? You don't. So
No, it's like this, right? I think at this point we need to get comfortable with having a mental model for our code bases. Like
yes,
I know that. See, you may have a Honda, I may have a Toyota, but
yeah,
we all know that the car has an engine block, it's got a transmission, it's got wheels, and we know where the problem is, right? Like I think at least
yeah,
our generation is one of the last
yeah,
ones that I
yeah,
don't mean to say that in a different way, but
yeah,
at least we know if that the car sort of breaks down, where to really look.
yeah.
We don't really know. We were not involved in the process of building the car, but we know where to look,
Right,
right? So
right, right.
that's the kind of idea if you have for your code base, that's still sufficient. But that's
Yeah,
where you made a very key point, right? If you ask the loop to build your ERP system, you're not going to have that idea. It's just a magic
no,
carpet you're riding. You don't know how it works. But
no.
if you built it
I'm yeah, yeah. No, you're
deliberately,
absolutely right.
you
And
know
that
where
the
your things are.
yeah, mental model is critical, and it becomes more critical because there is a super leaky abstractions in there that even though you make this, there will be point where this thing gonna fail. And when I've seen coding agent fails, it asks you very specific questions. It's asking for your advice and decisions, and those
Correct.
it will come with a recommendation, but it will come with lots of options. If you don't have a good mental model, there is no way you can answer those questions. And that's the so I mean, I know everybody wants to remove the human decisions. Loop is essentially removing the human review from the right, automating all the middle step. And that's great, but there will be a point where loops will also stop saying, I need your feedback on this. And if you don't have a mental model, you'll not be able to sort of guide the agent anymore properly.
I think that's where three skills really, really come in very important for any software engineer today. Thanks for leading to that, which is, I believe, anyone who's good at writing a test, I'm not talking
Yeah.
about the syntax of it, but formulating a
Hmm.
test or an
Hmm.
experiment is
Hmm.
extremely critical because you don't need to
Yes.
solve the problem, you need to formulate the experiment.
Correct.
If you're good at it, that's good. The second one is systems thinking. I think
Yeah.
everyone's talking about it, and being able to do a little bit of understanding of complex systems is important. Of
Right.
course, like domain driven design and C4 diagrams and all of that, that's got to be the back of your hand.
Yeah,
Without those, you're not going to be able to operate very well, because you
yeah,
need to have things which you can quickly visualize, right? Because there's so much out there, and probably takes you back to that whole point of the hiring spree, right? Amount of code that's coming out of this. You
course.
can hire, but what do the people who you hire do? And
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
they ought to be able to
yeah,
visualize
yeah,
this
yeah,
whole.
yeah. Yes. I mean, with all the efficiencies, these are the challenges. I think some of us who are kind of bleeding edge of this are realizing this. I mean, I feel like that others is going to eventually catch up, and my only concern is it's very important to do this. I mean, I think we can outsource the thinking, but we cannot outsource the what do you call that? Outsource the understanding. What we
Yep,
have
yep.
done with the model is that
Famous
we
quote.
outsource our thinking. That's great, but you still have to understand how those things work. That's sort of important. With that said,
I am still at the stage of saying you can outsource the execution, you cannot outsource the thinking. But I
yeah,
guess you are at the next level. You can still outsource the thinking, but never the understanding. So,
yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah.
interesting.
Um, all right. With that said, we will wrap it up. Thank you so much. I will make a clips of this and I'll share. Other than Harry, thank you. Thanks for your time. And I was
Yeah,
super late
thanks,
there.
Nilanjan. As always, this has been lovely.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
yeah, see you again.